Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Bo Martonic.
All right, we're back for another episode of the East Meets West Hunt podcast, and I'm on the line with John Barklow once again, back from popular demand. John, what's going on, buddy?
How's it going, Bo?
Oh, can't complain, John. It's getting a little colder here in Pennsylvania, and rifle season's kind of in swing here, and just still trying to fill my deer tag. What's going on with you?
No, I hear you. Yeah, season's pretty much over for me now. I try to wrap up around Thanksgiving-ish. I have hunted a little bit in December in the past, but just work gets in the way for me in December. Gets pretty busy, like we were talking. But, I think, you and I have known each other for well over a year, probably 2 years going on now. But did you know I was from Ohio? You and I basically come from the same neck of the woods.
Yeah. I think we actually talked about it on the last podcast where you're from Eastern Ohio. Yep. Yeah,
because you said, you talked about the Orange Army and getting out there for rifle season, and man, it just a lot of memories come flashing back. That's for sure when you start talking about that. But it's definitely cold out here in Montana, and we had some snow, and now we don't. But our big game season finished up for the most part just about 2 weeks ago now. So yeah, it was I don't know, I probably hunted more than I've ever hunted this year, but probably so I just had a lot of hard earned opportunities. Sometimes I'd go on hunts and never even get an opportunity. So I mean, overall I'm happy, but man, some years, like we were talking, some years just come easier than others, don't they?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It was it's been a tough year for me from this standpoint, and then listeners have heard all about that. As I say every day, I'm like, hey, next time I'm going out, 100% chance it's going to be successful, and here I am.
Yeah, but you got to have that attitude, and I have to tell myself that a lot. That's not like, I'm not just saying that frivolently, like, because I mean, literally 1 second can change your entire season from, either a bad, frustrating season to like the most successful you've ever had, and that's what's so crazy about hunting. You just never know when it's going to happen. Yeah.
And I think that was one of the hard lessons I've learned over the last few years was, I'd be going all these days of hunting and not having opportunities and anything. And sometimes you can get a little bit lackadaisical, I guess, for lack of better terms. And you can really miss an opportunity, which I have in the past from that. You just got to stay focused with it because, like you said, you never know when that opportunity is going to, present itself, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that pretty much, in a lot of respects, that pretty much summarized my season. Is I ended up being successful on 2 bull elk, but they didn't come easy, nor should they ever. But if I wasn't ready and it just kept training and trying to stay positive, which I said is very difficult, but there's split second decisions literally that can define a successful hunt and harvest from just a missed opportunity. And I had a friend who's a far better hunter than I'll ever be, and he told me that. He said, listen, success is going to depend on literally split second decisions. And so you have to have done all the training up front. You have to have already decided, like if you're going to hold out for a certain age class or size of an animal, whatever that is, like you better have that sorted out, because when it happens, it's going to happen quick. And, depending on how you react to that, is going to depend if you're successful. And, it's happened in the past that way, but this year, that's pretty much how every opportunity has presented itself. It's just long days of nothing. And then all of a sudden it happens. And, these 2 bulls, I never even had time to range them. John Dudley actually we were hunting together in Montana here, and he filmed it. I think he just put that episode out, but this bull steps out, and I really didn't have much to range, and I kind of, I knew it was 30-ish yards, and I just came to full draw and let the animal, kind of step out and just executed the shot. And then the same thing happened in Utah. Bull comes running up the mountain, literally with his head back, steam blowing out his nose, just literally wanting to kill me. Because we were bugling back at him, and he came looking for a fight, and I was pinned down on this trail, and I just said, I'm going to kill him right here. And just waited to kind of draw, till I saw the whites of his eyes, and his head went behind this little pine bough. And again, it happened so quick. I kind of guessed the range at 30, and it's either that, if you wait, if you try to range, if you second guess your shot sequence, like, it's just not, the opportunity is going to be gone. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot of what I'm doing is right, and I learned some things that I need to do better at, for sure.
Yeah, well, that sounds like, and again, you look at it from the outside, and you're like, wow, he killed 2 bulls in 1 year. Wow, he had a great season, and I'm sure it was, but you don't see the backstory of how many days I'm sure you hunted and the effort that was put into it.
Yeah, and I don't want it to come. I don't consider myself a great hunter at all. I definitely hunt with people who are great hunters, and I've learned from some really great hunters. But I think I'm a quick study. But that whole part of, you got to be in the arena, right? You got to be there. You got to be where they are. You've got to be ready. Your gear's got to be ready. All those things everybody talks about, and then you have to have it so ingrained in your head that I don't want to say you're not conscious in the moment. I'm certainly conscious in the moment, but there's no hesitation. There's no, well, I don't know, his thirds are a little short or this and that. It's like, if that's the bull you want to kill, you better kill him.
Yeah.
And it's just going to happen. It's just going to happen that quick sometimes. Other times you'll sit there and wait for hours, for him to push a cow by you or something. But it didn't happen that way this year. And so that's the opportunities that were given to me. And if I didn't take advantage of them, like, those are the only opportunities I got. Both of those kills were on, if I recall correctly. So the one in Montana was literally the last 5 minutes of the last day. And Utah was like maybe the second to last day, something like that. But, there wasn't going to be a whole lot of time left. And so those were the opportunities that got presented, and I was ready to pounce on it.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. What you're talking about with the rangefinder thing, that's a couple of years ago. That's one of my big mistakes. I think I messed up on 2 bulls because of it. And the thing is, when I'm whitetail hunting, I range everything ahead of time, so it's a little bit simpler because you don't need to pull out your rangefinder and hit anything. Well, when I had a bull come across in front of me, and I bet he was only 30 to 33 yards or so, and it was a small opening, and the cow went in front of him, and I tried pulling up my rangefinder to hit it beforehand. By the time I was putting my rangefinder away, he was through that opening, and I'm like, why? Looking back on it, I'm like, first of all, I'm shooting a double pin sight. I'm shooting one of those spot hogs, so my top pin is 25 and my bottom pin's 38, and they're locked in, and he was in between that. And when I put my pins up, you could put the top pin on the top of his vitals and the bottom pin on the bottom, and it was still in the kill zone with it, so like I could have been a couple yards off and still executed a great shot. And you just sometimes what I'm realizing is I need to stick with my instincts a little bit more, especially when it comes to elk hunting, which is, again, so unfamiliar to me. Well, I guess I have over like 30 days into it now, but it's still so new to me.
You're banking those karma points, buddy. Believe me, it'll happen. And when it happens, it's going to happen. I'm telling you, it'll happen quick. And then you'll be like, what just went down?
Yeah.
But I think instincts is, it's the right word. Like if you're in the hunt and you can't force it. Again, guys better than me have taught me this. It's like, listen, this is what the hunt is giving you, the weather, the animals, the terrain, whatever. And you got to go with it. And when you're kind of in that zone, like you are working more on instinct, and obviously the more experience you have, the better that instinct becomes. But, yeah, I've seen it, believe me, I've done it. What I'm not telling you, Bo, or I haven't told you yet is, the black bear I missed, all the axis deer I missed, the stalks I blew on mule deer, like, yeah, I killed 2 bulls, but I definitely had lots and lots of other awesome learning opportunities this year, that nobody ever gets to hear about or see on InstaChat. But I was antelope hunting this year with a couple guys, and we were just driving from one area to the next, and we saw this good buck, and he's kind of off the side of the road. And so we drove past him. Buddy got out, kind of tried to get in front of him, and ambush this animal. And I mean, he's still a relatively new bow hunter. He's definitely got plenty of kills under his belt, and so whatever, an hour later, we turn around and start to go back down the road, and we see him walking our way. And, hey, what happened? It was a really nice buck. And he said, you wouldn't believe it. He goes, that antelope walked right to me. And I'm like, and he goes, and I see the horns, the tips of his horns coming up over the rise, this little hill. He's on one side, the animal's on the other. I said, what'd you do? And he goes, I panicked and took out my rangefinder. And I said, you're kidding me. And he goes, no. And the antelope came and stood right at him, looking at him at 15 yards, and he ranged him.
Oh.
And I said, damn it, dude. I said, that's when you just need to draw your bow and just be completely anchored and settled in. And as soon as he shows himself at 15 yards, you shoot him. He goes, yeah, I know. But, again, that's a lesson he learned, and he'll never forget it. And I've been there.
Yeah.
But again, it's not, he wasn't working on instinct. He was trying to do the right thing, but it's like, man, you're 15 yards. Like, you don't need to range the animal. You just don't.
Yeah, John, when I was up in Alberta there recently, Jim Hull, who we were up there with, and when you get to listen to that podcast, you'll hear some of the things he said have stuck with me. And Jim's a really, I guess, when he talks, he's one of those guys that I just listen to every word, because he's got the experience, and he just talks with so much confidence. And he was talking about responding rather than reacting. And that whole, he goes, inexperienced hunters react to a situation when say a big whitetail comes close to you, but experienced hunters respond to it. And he was just talking about like kind of that mentality, and how that kind of apply to really just about anything. But and the other thing that he was saying, the one day right before we went out for an evening sit, he looked at me right in the eyes and he's like, you better be thinking about this out in the tree stand. What are you going to do when you have this opportunity? How are you going to make it happen? And, just really keeping that in the forefront of your mind, I guess, is you work so hard to get that opportunity, but what are you going to do when it actually presents itself?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if you're out there to hunt and harvest, and some people aren't, but if you're out there to kill, then that's what you need to be thinking about, because there's a big difference between wanting to hunt that animal and kill the target animal, or just going out and observing wildlife. And it's just a slightly different mentality, right? Just in your mindset, like that's the animal, like I'm going to go kill him, as opposed to that's the animal, I'm going to try to go get close and try to make something happen. It's like, no, I'm going to go kill that animal. Yep. Like, that's the animal, we're going to do this. And, but in your mind, or in my mind anyways, like I've played those scenarios. If I miss a shot, I'll come back to my house and try to replicate that as much as I can. Or, like in your case, like shooting through a hole at say 35 yards, I will try to replicate that and understand where my arrow hits and how I can shoot through a basketball size hole at 35 yards. Like, cause that'll just add to my experience for the next time. If that ever happens, that, okay, it's not going to happen again. It's going to go down differently the next time, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's great. I mean, Jim, I think put it, I think he put it exceptionally well. You're responding, you're not reacting. I mean, reacting almost to me implies like a bit of,
like nervousness,
like chaos or nervousness, and responding is, nope, I'm experienced. I'm ready. I've thought this through, and I know how to do this.
Yeah.
And,
Were you almost,
you sit there, we've talked, you sit there in a tree stand for a week and you get maybe one opportunity, and it can surprise you sometimes when it happens.
mm-hmm. No, that's exactly true. And I had, a couple, I guess there were opportunities this year from the tree stand that caught me off guard, and it ended up being, deer that I didn't shoot, just because I guess my goals for this year, and I let them pass, but I'm like, geez, I don't know if I could have made that happen, because a lot of them, and it goes anywhere from, from elk hunting to whitetail hunting, but a lot of my setups, say it's in a creek bottom and you have a noisy stream going by and you might have a row of hemlock trees next there, and they're right there. I mean, you have to be ready. And again, that was something else I learned from Jim, was just really, being at attention all the time, and just not, I guess getting lazy with it, just because you've hunted again for 7, 8, 9 days, however long it is. And same thing with, with elk hunting, is always just, I guess, being ready for the opportunity and making sure you can capitalize on it. And
yeah, we had quite a few bulls in Montana this year that they came in quiet. It just wasn't happening. The rut just wasn't happening full swing where we were. And, we'd have bulls, you'd see a bull 800 yards away and you'd call, and then 30 minutes later, that bull would be like, if you weren't ready, that bull would be standing in front of you. Well, John ended up shooting one at 15 yards that he had called from 750 yards away.
wow.
And, yeah, just absolutely crazy. Right. And, so it was just this, I don't know, it's just different. And so it's like, okay, that's a scenario. That's what we got to deal with. So, the one I ended up shooting that night, it was super, super windy. And I was like, man, this is not going to happen. Like, I don't even know if I could shoot. And right at dusk, the wind died down. Well, I had seen a bull go in this bedding area. And so I said, well, heck, we got nothing else going on. Let's go over there. Well, and then the wind died down. And so John put out a couple calls, and before we know it, this bull is standing basically inside the dark timber at 10 yards. And so we were just kind of at a standstill. And then when he started moving to our right, I just, again, I guess I had to respond and just go, yeah, he's going to come out there. If he comes out there, it's going to be 30 yards plus or minus 2. And as soon as I saw movement, I came to full draw. And, we got, interestingly enough, the whole thing on film. I'm not a big film guy, but, and it worked out right. But, it's just that's what was offered, and that's just the way it played out. And, it was a hard week elk hunting this year. So tell me about your Colorado, adventures. You've been in elk.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this year, so I went back to the same area that I was telling you about. I think last time we talked was like about a month or so, or 2 months before the trip. And I ended up going back to the same area that I had been in the previous 2 years. I had gotten to know the area, kind of learning where the elk were, holing up a little bit once the muzzleloader season came in and everything else. And so I ended up going out a week early to spend a full 14 days out there. Just kind of last minute, I realized that I could move some things around and make it work, and went out September 1st and got some intel from some people and talked to the wildlife biologists, and they were like, oh, the elk should be in the high country in this, and they kind of had given me a little bit of information on some of the areas that I was already in and where to look for them. And well, we got up there and it had been so dry that the elk there was not even any deer up in the high country for the most part. It just, all the grass was dead and it was all burned up. And it just seemed like we were about, I don't know, 4 or 5 days behind, like since it burned up and they just moved out. So we spent, I bet, actually it was 7 days before I even located one elk. Like it was just,
wow.
We moved.
That's rough.
We ended up moving to a different part of the unit because we did find them, but they were down on the private. So this area I was hunting, the higher you got, was the public land. And as you got down, below 8,000 feet, it was into the private. and that's where the elk seemed to be at. They were down a little bit lower where the grass was greener and everything else. So I was kind of, disgusted with it, and came out to kind of relocate and find a different spot, and ran into a guy in the parking lot of a hotel, and he was wearing a camouflage hat, so I figured I'd go talk to him. And the guy ended up being a listener to the podcast, and was like, and he's like, hey, he's like, I was just in this area. He goes, it's a different part of the unit, super steep. He goes, I can't walk up and down these hills any longer. He goes, but there's elk there. And I said, all right. He's like, he's like, hey, here's where you go, blah, blah, blah. He gave me a lot of great intel, and I thanked that guy, and he was from Kansas. And so me and my dad went out there and, packed in, and he wasn't lying. It was super steep. It was definitely a little bit more deer country than elk, but there was elk there. We found a big herd, and, I got to a point where I couldn't figure out how to get in on them with the way the cliffs were. Like, they were literally, it seems like the worst spot ever, until I'd recently watched a video of Aaron Snyder killing a mule deer, and I'm like, all right, well, he was in way worse cliffs than I was, but and so anyways, I kind of got cliffed out there, and once we made a different game plan and got into where they were like bedded at, another hunter came up the bottom of the basin and ended up blowing the elk out. So long story short, that first part of that trip was kind of, it was really tough, and I was really kind of down on the whole situation. But at that point, my dad was flying back to Pennsylvania, and I was meeting up with a few other guys to go out, and we took horses back into a location. We were way back in there, and we get back to where they normally would set up camp, and we were going to set up a base camp and hunt out of that, and there was like 5 or 6 other tents set up. Like, and I'm talking 9 miles back or 8 miles back, whatever it was. I mean, it wasn't, and they had llamas lined up, and I mean, these people were doing it too, and that last, 6 days of the trip or whatever, got into a lot of elk. It just didn't make a shot happen. Had a bull that was the biggest bull I've seen in Colorado. I had him at 72 yards, and I could have shot, but he was definitely alert, and I just didn't feel confident in shooting that with him being alert. I'd feel confident in around that range with him, if he had his head down feeding and stuff, but it just wasn't a shot that I was willing to take. So I had to let him walk against what I wanted to do there, and ended up getting into another satellite bull. It was a 7x6, but he was a satellite to that other one that I'd seen, and had him in front of my buddies that were hunting. They were like, he was at like 10 or 12 yards, but the sagebrush was so thick there that or the oak brush, sorry. And they just couldn't get a shot at him. And I'm watching through my binoculars, like, how aren't they shooting, And the bull ended up, kicking out and just kind of going back the way he came, because he couldn't find the other bull that we were calling. And I ran down to the creek bottom. I said, this is, my opportunity to cut him off. And I ran down. He's coming back. I ranged this tree about 52 yards, had pressure on the release, started drawing back. He needed about 5-6 more steps. And those other guys didn't know I'd moved down there, and they bugled again. And he stops and he turns around and goes back to them again. And I was like, yo, no. It was that kind of experience. And then there was another bull that I passed on, only for the reason that I didn't realize he was legal. I mean, he was very, very small bull, but I would have been just as happy shooting that. And he came out actually he was just coming out to get water. It was real hot that day, and came out with a bunch of cows at about 60 yards in the wide open, everything. And I couldn't figure out if his front brow tine was long enough. And I wasn't it was my fault for not being 100% sure with the regulations as far as if it needed 2 brow points that were, 4 inches or if it was 1. And, I was kicking myself in the ass for not being 100% clear on that going in. I just never really thought I'd be in that situation, I guess. And so that was kind of the gist of it there, but had a bunch of encounters there towards the end of it, just nothing that I was able to, execute a shot on. But let's put it this way.
Yeah.
I was run down pretty bad after that many days of elk hunting. I
can imagine.
I didn't pack enough food that I needed to. It was enough for 7 days, but going that long, just, even being somewhat deficient, and I just felt drained. I got really sick the last couple nights, to the point like my throat was basically swollen shut, and I just didn't want to do anything. But we still went out hunting, and it was pretty miserable, like you said, the last few days. But it was definitely a grind, I guess.
You were at some altitude, right?
Yeah. So started out the trip as high as, I think the one ridge we went over around 12,000, but we were hunting them around 11,500 there, and ended up where we were getting into the bulls in a completely different unit. We were down at like 7,800, 8,000. So,
okay.
Yeah. So it was, completely different. It was just funny seeing that much different country, in that amount of time, and watching it kind of, the leaves go from summer to fall all in the time I was out there,
Yeah. Well, I certainly commend you for not taking that, that one shot. I mean, you never regret it, right? I mean, you kind of like, well, I should have, I don't know, I missed an opportunity, but and you never regret it until you take a shot and it's just not a good one. And then you regret it the rest of your life. So, but with that said, and I know that, maybe not all your listeners, but some of them are from back east and looking to maybe go do their first elk hunt. I mean, elk are big animals. They're big animals. They're big boned, even a mule deer, big bodied. And some guys, depending on their setup, they're not shooting, heavier equipment, but with all that said, and I'm certainly not condoning taking bad shots. I'm not. Like, I think everybody should be very conservative in their shots, but also you have to take the first best shot that's offered to you and not wait for the perfect shot, if that makes any sense. 'Cause when you're running and gunning out in the mountains and you're trying to play thermals and, just get the elk to think that he's got the upper hand, but you've got the upper hand, but you got to kill him there and you can't let him go 4 more steps. Like, you got to take the first best ethical shot that's offered. And sometimes it's not completely broadside, it's just not, but it's got to be, well within your range, and you got to have the right equipment. But, full disclosure, those 2 bulls I killed this year, they were both, and I knew it, but they were both quartering to me. Now, not hard quartering to, but a little quartering to. And I knew that I had to put it right behind their shoulder to get it to be effective, and at 30 yards, I thought I was more than competent to do that. And then, I don't mind talking about it because, John Dudley got it on film, but, he called that bull and it came in to 15 yards. And, obviously that's well within his effective range. And that bull was not going to give a broadside shot. He came in frontal, and he shot him frontal. And that bull, the only reason that bull went 50 yards is because it was straight downhill. And I mean, the bull was dead on its feet. I mean, the blood at the shot was just insane. But a lot of guys wouldn't have taken that shot. And I'm certainly not telling guys to take that shot if they haven't studied anatomy and have the right setup, and the right broadhead. But there's a good chance that was the only opportunity that elk was going to present itself to John, right?
Yeah.
Or present itself to me. And, if you're, again, you're inexperienced, you gotta kind of work through that. But sometimes that might be the only opportunity that you get in an entire season. And again, not condoning unethical shots. I'm just saying you need to take the first best ethical shot that's offered, and that sometimes that's not completely broadside.
Yeah, and I mean, and like you're saying, as far as understand how the animal's body's laid out. I think the guys from Born and Raised Outdoors did a YouTube video on the frontal shot, as far as like they had a 3D elk set up, and they were showing and kind of had it overlaid with how the vitals are laid out and how you'd have to shoot at different angles, and just really being I guess figuring out how that works. My dad's whitetail that you were talking to me about, John, he shot that off the ground frontal, and arrow came out the back leg, went all the way through him, out the back leg, and he was dead within 30 yards. And he's actually made that shot a lot of times. He won't take it out of a tree stand because of the angle.
No.
But off the ground, he's like, I feel just as confident with that shot as I do, any, if it's, presents itself that way. And
yeah, and
again,
I would
that's
say
not
at a close distance. I mean, most people say, 20 yards and under.
Yeah.
Something like that. And I can't determine that for everybody, but for me, that's my self-imposed limit.
Yep.
For an elk is 20 yards or under. I mean, the dirty little secret is that a lot of these really successful elk hunters that, we've heard about for many, many years, and a lot of them have hunted by themselves, although not exclusively. But, a lot of times, as when you're hunting by yourself, especially trying to call an elk, what do? They'll come in and they'll be coming at you frontal. But a lot of those elk hunters have been shooting elk and killing them with frontal shots for years, but nobody wanted to talk about it for fear of, kind of being, slandered. And Corey Jacobson did an exceptional job with his Elk 101. Same thing, showing the anatomy, had a bull, the way they dissected it, showed the anatomy, showed the hole, showed where to shoot, and then showed some shots on film. And, I think people shouldn't take that if they don't feel comfortable, but I would encourage people, to study the anatomy and get confident enough and shoot a good enough setup, that they can take that shot. If you get that shot next to your bow, like, you should, I'm sure you'll take it.
Yeah.
You've studied it, what you're looking for.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like you said, it's just, and the more you practice it and look into it, the more confident I guess you can be, going into it. And I learned one thing, I guess with myself, is I've been really trying to practice longer range shots to, again, be more, competent at closer distances and everything. But there was a lot of chances this year that were at that further range. And did I capitalize on them? No, but I felt confident in shooting, 50 to 60 yards without a problem. And where, maybe even years prior, I wasn't as confident with it. I had my, range limited at 50, which, say that bull would have stepped out, it would have been out of my range, a few years ago. And I don't know, shooting a lot and practicing kind of those different scenarios, I think would really help out. And again, this is, me looking from the outside looking in, since I, haven't killed an elk, but, I don't know, my confidence level, I guess, went up after, shooting for, basically year round and all summer at long distances,
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. If you come out west, I mean, the reality is you have to take slightly longer shots than, when I'm back east whitetail hunting. Part of it's terrain, part of it's the animals, the way you hunt them. And I think it's more accepted now that, one, the equipment can do it, and two, people tend to shoot, not everybody, but tend to shoot, year round or more often than they have. But I think everybody's got to figure out their own limit. But, I can tell you for me, in my experience, just hunting mule deer, if I couldn't shoot 40 to 50 yards effectively, like in kind of odd body angles and stuff, I don't know if I'd ever killed a mule deer yet. I mean, the reality of mule deer hunting is, for most of us, like 40 to 50 yards is about right. I know some guys that they say, yeah, I get to 50 yards and I stop because of that sixth sense that a big mule deer buck tends to have, where he kind of knows something's up and he just stands up in his bed with his butt facing you and walks straight away. But a lot of us, not everybody, but, I'll speak for myself, I shoot a slightly heavier setup because the animals are bigger boned, because I know I might be taking a slightly longer shot and that arrow needs to buck the wind a little better, so we kind of set our equipment up out here for those scenarios. But I don't think you can practice enough. I mean, I'm a year-round shooter and have been for 15 years for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't got to shoot with you yet, but I hear you're a pretty good shot, and I know you're not gonna sit there and say that, but I've heard you're a pretty good shot.
I'm a pretty good shot. I won't necessarily, I'm a pretty good shot, but the people I shoot with a lot of times make me look like a complete hack. Like, I've just been fortunate enough to shoot around some really good people and learn from them and quite frankly, be very humbled. And just try to learn everything I possibly can. But, I put a lot of time and effort into it as well. I just, there's not a month I'm not either, pounding paper targets or 3D or whatever. But I also have the mentality as a dedicated bow hunter that, I may only get one shot this next hunting season, and man, I've got to do everything in my power to make that one shot count. For my sake and especially for the animal.
Yeah.
So, but that's just the way I approach it. When I get into that red zone, so to speak, the process is so ingrained in me that, I can think through it and just execute and not, I almost don't worry about the outcome because I know I put the work in. The outcome's going to be what I want it to be.
Yeah. John, do you shoot like any of the Total Archery Challenges or any of those events?
I do. Yeah. Normally I shoot 2 to 3 of those Total Archery Challenges a year. I think they're exceptional events. I would recommend anybody go out and try one. The best way I describe it is it's kind of like golf, but for bow hunters. Where you go out, you're a group of 4 or 6, and there's a tee box and a target. And, if you want to shoot from the tee box or the cone then you can. And if it's too far, just walk up till it's an acceptable distance and shoot. And so, I'll go shoot with my buddies one day, then I'll go and shoot with my wife the next day. And it's just an awesome experience. But the shots are so challenging that it's just absolutely phenomenal practice for hunting scenarios. And I think they have one out. Don't they have one out in Pennsylvania now?
Yeah, they have one in Seven Springs, which is outside of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
I've been going to that for 3 or 4 years, however long they've been having it now. And this past year, it's funny too, because you get the pressure put on you, especially when you're with a group of your friends or buddies or anything else. I remember last year, I think our group was it was extremely big. It was like 8 or 10 people, and everyone's just ragging on each other and everything else. So it puts you in some high pressure scenarios to make some tough shots, and Sean definitely sets up the courses to make you try to lose arrows, I think.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I mean, I plan on losing an arrow a day when I'm there, and that's about my average. And but it's just fun to do. And if I'm not shooting those, I do not a lot, but as the season approaches, I do what I call stress courses, or what people in the military, law enforcement used to call stress courses, but just anything to kind of get your heart rate up, and then go shoot the elk target or the deer target at 47 yards across a hill or something like that. Do push-ups and then go do a shot and see your effective range, or what you think is your effective range, all of a sudden starts to become a lot shorter, and you get a lot more humbled. Like you said, you're going up and down those hills, you're at elevation, and things change. The other thing that's interesting, we could talk about maybe on another time, but you're coming from not sea level, but a very low elevation. And then you're going to go, say, hunt elk at 11, 12,000 feet. Like, you're going to have a different aero impact just because the humidity's so much less, the air's so much lighter. You're going to, so, you need to, not you necessarily, but people need to consider that. I live at 5,000 feet, and when I go to 8 or 9 or 10,000 feet, I have to take a couple shots with my bow and gang adjust to make up for that elevation difference.
John, and that's a good point. For me too, is when I get out of the truck, I shoot about 40 yards is about kind of where I set up throw the Reinhardt out and shoot. Perfect. And I don't know, for me, what I think I don't know if this makes sense or not, but it seemed like I was shooting a little high. Would that be right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Because someone had told me that, so I always just kind of had it, like, before I went out, I had it so I was shooting a little bit low, and then I went out and it seemed to be pretty good there. And then all I had to do was just kind of adjust my dial a little bit. And, I was only shooting at, 40 yards, and I'm not sure if that would, amplify it at longer distances or not. But that's a really good point.
Yeah, no, it does. And, so like for me, I went from here, 5,000 feet in Montana, I went to northern British Columbia, but it was very cold and very humid and kind of heavy air. And when I, got to camp and I was shooting at 40 yards, that's kind of the 40 or 50 is what I picked, and I'm hitting low. Well, I kind of expected that. So then I had to just gang adjust. You don't have to adjust the individual pins. You just kind of gang adjust. The pin gap will stay the same. But yeah, and Randy Ulmer has some great stuff on this. And he's the one that kind of clued me in years ago, about that. So I'd be living in Alaska literally at sea level, and I would go north to the Brooks Range. I'd come down here to hunt. And, even though the bow's, sighted in, so to speak, you still had to adjust elevation for the different altitudes that you were at.
That's a really good point, and I'm glad you brought that up for everyone, because it's easy for, say you get out there and you're sighted in ahead of time, and I'd say most people probably throw, and this is assuming, but throw out a target at 20 yards, make sure nothing got rattled in the drive or on the flight, and then they're good, and they go out. And that could, like you said, be a little bit worse at longer distances.
Yeah, 20 yards, the reality is it hides a lot of form flaws. I would say, 40 or 50 yards, I don't think you have to try to air it out to 80 or something like that. But 40 or 50 yards will definitely show you, something where you're still accurate enough that you can determine that it's not you, that it, truly is the equipment needs to be adjusted a little bit.
Yeah. So, John, now that we've talked about this and everything else, what do I need to do to kill an elk? I need the secret one line answer for it to happen. That's, that's all there is to it.
So I can guarantee you that if you don't keep trying, you will not kill one.
You know what? That's some good advice there. I'll definitely.
There's a bunch of cliches, but like the guy from Kansas, you got to hunt where they are too.
Yeah.
I've definitely done a lot of hunting where they aren't. That's for sure. I've definitely hunted where, but the other thing is, and I don't from our discussions, I don't think you're this person, but I've got coworkers and just other people that, I've been around that have never killed an elk or a mule deer, insert animal here, of any, they just haven't killed that species. But, the first elk I'm going to kill is going to be a 360 bull. And it's like, man, you might be right waiting your entire life to do that. And, if that's what they want to do, that's fine. But, the reality is most of us don't go kill 360 bulls every year, and some people never even see one, let alone, ever kill one in their lifetime. So I would say, manage your expectations. And like you said, you'd have killed that raghorn if you'd have known that he was within, the legal limits. And, I've taken my own advice. I've done that. I didn't, start shooting mule deer that were 180s, because you got to get some experience under your belt.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. What you say about mule deer, I have an obsession with wanting to hunt them, but I told myself I gotta kill an elk before I move on to, try different species.
No, there you go.
And, this year I'm debating on changing up states a little bit just to do something a little bit different. Thinking either Montana or Idaho, kind of looking at different options there. Nothing's set in stone, but I'm actually getting to the point where I may end up drawing some decent tags from been putting in for points and everything else. But either way, I'm going to be going out west chasing elk. I have to. It's one of them things like, right when I'm done, I'm like, maybe next year I'll do something different, and then give me 2 weeks or even by the time I get home, and I'm like, all right, I'm ready to go next year again. and
I'm pretty much obsessed with it. Luckily out here we get opportunities to hunt a lot of different species just on, our general tags every year. And I don't know, we have a very long elk season for archery, but, I'll take all 6 weeks if that's what it comes to hunt elk, and put everything else aside. Cause that's kind of like my number one, it's my priority. And it gets in your blood for sure. But, if you can get in an area where they're talking, and I don't know where you've been hunting, if they've been talking a whole lot of times on public land with pressure, they kind of pipe down. But, if you can find some elk that are talking, man, you just have such a much higher chance of success of getting in there and killing one,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this past year was the least amount of bugles, and I was there double the time, but it just, I don't know. It was extremely tough, but the ones, once you do hear them and stuff, like you said, you at least can create an opportunity. Whether you screw that up or not, it's on you. But still, it's I definitely am going to be looking again for a little bit different of an area, and I think like all general units I'm sure are hunted, heavily and everything, but something with Colorado recently that it just seems like everywhere you go, there's just people. And I think it's a very popular, state, and it's the closest one to the east and everything else. And again, these are just assumptions, but I just want to try something a little bit different. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, we can talk when we get off the phone about maybe some areas, but I'm not a
don't be saying anything now.
No, but I'm not a turkey hunter, but I have hunted turkeys, to some mediocre success, but imagine trying to hunt a turkey in the spring that never gobbled, right? That never made any noise, that you couldn't call to and bring in. Like, it'd be a really, really tough go, right? And elk is kind of the same way. For as big an animal as they are, and for as many as they may have in a herd, man, if they want to stay quiet, it is rough sledding to try to kill one. Not that you can't, but it just makes it really tough. And those public land areas where you have other people, and it's great we have public lands, but the animals, whatever animal it is, they're just going to act a little bit different. And you definitely got to try to stack more odds in your favor than in theirs. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I guess on that note, John, I don't think there's any other, cheat, things you're going to give me a one-liner that's going to help me kill an elk. So I guess we'll move on to.
I'm still trying to figure out my own one-liner. I'm not. No.
Everybody wants the easy way out, and I'm no different. Okay.
Yeah. No, I am too. I just don't know what it is.
That's what someone told me at work. That's they're hunters, but they're not, as into it as I am. They're like, Bo, you've been going on some hunts that are, all of them are pretty low success rates, and you haven't really come home with anything. I'm like, yeah, Yeah, I know. I don't know how to answer
Wow, that's
that.
harsh.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, they're honest. And I was like, yeah, I use all my vacation to put myself in miserable situations sometimes, but it's what I like to do. So I wouldn't
There's
want
worse
to.
ways to spend your time.
Yeah, that's for sure. So John, let's get into gear a little bit here. So let's talk new Sitka Gear Big Game 2019. What do you have for me here? I mean, this is the first time I'm hearing about it too, so I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, so I got to collect my thoughts because, like we were talking before we hit record, I'm actually heading to Asia in a few weeks. Well, no, a week, to go look at all our fall 2020 prototypes. So we're almost done with fall 2020 development. So 2019 is almost like, for me in my job, it's almost like old news and the world doesn't even know about it yet. So it's kind of funny. Sometimes I slip up, if people listen real close, sometimes I slip up and say things I shouldn't about certain products, but,
Well,
so
if you say anything that's wrong, I'll just let me know and I'll cut it out for you.
yeah, I'll bet you will.
Yeah, yeah, I'll cut it out. All right.
So to talk about 2019, let me jump back to 2018. So as you know, and you sent me a great email with some feedback, but kind of reset our pack line for Big Game, and got some new designers and developers in, and had some ideas, and so we were able to make what is called the Mountain Hauler 6200, which is the newest pack in Sitka's Big Game line. So that came out this year, 2018. And that's a big load hauling pack, multi-day, probably, certainly you could go a week with provisions on your back and carry elk out. With those learnings in 2018, I knew that probably wouldn't be the big volume driver of packs, because, not as many people hunt that way. But took those learnings, redesigned the complete bag. So the bag, the design features, the zippers and everything is different. The frame's a little bit different, but the suspension is still as kind of comfortable and plush as a 6200. And so anyways, we came out with the Mountain Hauler 4000. So that'll be new for 2019. Pretty cool. I think that's the pack that, if I'm not hunting just close to the road or a trailhead, that's the pack that I've been wearing this last year. Carried, fortunate enough to help. Obviously they weren't all mine, but fortunate enough to carry, I think, 5 bulls out, or parts of bulls, with the Mountain Hauler 4000 this year. It's just a great pack. I can use it for a day pack. I can do an overnighter or two. Like, I could probably do a weekend with it. But if I did kill something, it's large enough to put a hind quarter of an elk in, so that you're not having to, go all the way back to the trailhead to get a frame pack to come back and get meat out. So I'm pretty excited about that.
So wait, John, hold on a second. You said that you're lucky enough to carry out 5 elk for buddies and everything. Do you really consider yourself lucky there? That sounds like a painful experience.
I love it. I love it. I have a weak mind and a strong back, so and a short-term memory.
That's
so funny. No, but that's what I do. I mean, I've got to test this gear and see other people use it, and so we were able to, somebody gets a bull down and I can get over there, and I try to go there and help them. That's the only way to know if this stuff works. I mean, believe me, I have other people doing it too, but as much as I can do, I love to do that. So, yeah. Pretty stoked about that. And I might have some of the numbers wrong, but let's just say that the pack, so there's a way to expand the volume of the pack. If you did get a bull down and needed to get a little more volume, similar to the 6200, but I believe the backpack rides at right about 2,800 cubic inches in its kind of regular volume. Okay. And that counts some outside pockets and top lid. I think so. somewhere around, let's just say 3,000. We'll round it up to 3. But anyways, and then when you do kill something and you need to expand it, or you want to open up all the side compression straps and everything, it'll actually expand to a little over 4,000 cubic inches. So it's actually I think it's a great size for, certainly the Western guys, or even somebody like yourself, although it's not designed to carry a tree stand, but, if you're going, way into the mountains in PA or whatever the case may be, but, it's light enough and small enough that I can use it as a day pack, but I can certainly carry it's rated to 150 pounds if I need to carry, a bunch of meat out. So that's one of the new packs. And then,
yeah, John, real quick about the tree stand thing. I actually just recently was messing around with that, and I was hauling tree stands with the mountain hauler without much issue.
Were you?
Yeah. So
don't tell Chris that.
I can't. I know. I don't want to. Yeah. No. I
hope Chris doesn't listen to this podcast.
I know. I'll have to make sure I block him from the email list from seeing it when it goes out. But no, I did haul some stands with it, just using the outside 2 straps, and it worked pretty efficiently. Let's put it that way. But anyways,
awesome.
Let's keep going on the big game stuff. Enough whitetail.
Yeah, no. So the next pack is more. Well, it's more of a day pack, and it's called the Mountain 2700. So it's 2,700 cubic inches total. Much less of a frame, and really nice suspension, but certainly not designed to carry 150 pounds. It's I say it can carry 45 pounds very comfortably, but it's a great pack to go out for the day, to go out scouting, to certainly you could go elk hunt or mule deer hunt. You could go shed hunt with it. It's got some really nice features to carry, spotting scopes, tripods, just have great access to, just jackets and food and water during the day. And then we also have a woman's version of the Mountain 2700 as well. So just making that commitment to the women's line, I realized we really didn't have any packs to go with our clothing for them. So similar bag. Well, the bag is identical, but the suspension is really where the difference is in the women's pack. And there's a lot of different, as you can imagine, ergonomic shape and things to the waist belt and the takeoff angles and just the shoulder straps and how that fits the woman's form. So, pretty excited about the 2700. Was able to, use that quite a bit, like during antelope season and things like that. But again, no expectation to carry meat. And so those 2 packs and the Mountain Hauler 6200 are going to be the new packs in the line. In addition to that APEC pack, which is that really, really low volume, super stealthy, quiet pack, that we have out this year as well. So some of the older packs, the Flash 20, the Bivy 30s, those are going to kind of phase out, and we're going to bring in these new packs for 2019. So that's the first part of the big game. The second part is got into something that's an extension that we've not done before, and we have what I'm calling the Flash shelters for 2019. So there's a Flash shelter 8x10, which stands for 8 foot by 10 foot, and a Flash shelter 10x12. And it is a 40D silicone impregnated nylon, and it's got our subalpine and open country prints on it. So the first and only Optifade printed tarps in the world. And what's cool is the print goes all the way through, so it's printed on both sides. And got a lot of requests from guys who are, say in Colorado looking for mule deer, and they're up on a hillside, they're glassing. Obviously, they don't want a deer to look up at them and see a yellow tarp, and they don't want backpackers seeing them and that they're in the area. Guides are covering up their tents so other guides don't fly over and see where guys are camped. But it's a great tent. Or shelter. It's waterproof. It's windproof. Blocks sun. So it's rated to UPF 25. Wind, obviously, snow. So it's a great shelter from the elements, and it's got a really unique shape. So it's not just a rectangle. And there's some real, I'm calling it the most durable lightweight tarp made, in the sense that all the guide points are really well constructed, and the shape allows you to pitch it in multiple different configurations, everything from, an A-frame that you could throw a sleeping bag under and absolutely, kind of get under and live as a shelter, to just a windbreak. It's got 2 reinforced pole pockets on the center line, inside the tarp, so you can pitch it with poles. You can all kinds of configurations, and I'm really excited about those. Been able to use those for, I guess this would have been the 2nd season now. So that's something new that we've never gotten into. So the flash shelters are new. So that kind of takes care of the equipment.
Wow, that caught me off guard a little bit. I honestly wasn't expecting that at all. That's cool.
Yeah, Aaron Snyder might be a little mad at me.
Yeah,
I had to do it. I had to do it, and and they actually make some awesome tarps and tents and things like that. But if somebody's looking for an Optifade printed tarp, we're going to have it for them for this next year. And
oh, that's cool.
It's pretty awesome. I mean, guys are, like I said, glass and mule deer, and we've got them pitched on hilltops, in Kodiak for brown bear hunts, and I mean, you name it. We've laid the tarp down on the ground and put deboned meat on them, and the whole deal. So
John, when I did the podcast with Aaron earlier in the year, and he was talking about, I was asking him about the differences, between doing like, a 3-season 1-person shelter versus doing a tarp and everything. And he had recommended that I use the tarp, and really wasn't saying, Kafaru or anybody else, but just talking about the differences. And I ended up trying out this new lightweight tent that was a 1-person tent and everything else set up with trekking poles. And man, did I hate that. I did not feel confident in that whatsoever. I didn't even take it to Colorado with me, because I tried it in Pennsylvania and the wind was about blowing on me, condensation all over me, everything else. And I just wasn't a big fan of it. Actually, I probably shouldn't say anything because I'm trying to sell it, but
well,
anyways,
I think everything has its place.
Yeah.
Everything has its place. And, a tarp certainly is, if you're going to use a tarp as your only shelter, and Kafara makes some awesome, true, tents, right? Teepees and stuff like that. But,
yeah,
if you're going to go out there with a tarp as your only shelter, I think you need to have definitely some experience pitching it in multiple configurations in the wind. But it's a great lightweight piece. Again, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but I think the 8x10 is right at 1 pound. And I think that 10x12 is 1.25 pounds. So, probably not the lightest tarps out there, but certainly really durable. They are very lightweight. And then again, you get that subalpine or open country print that's on both sides. And it's just an exceptional, I just think it's an exceptional addition to what we're trying to do here at Sitka. So, pretty excited about those. And there's some tricks, and Aaron probably knows them a lot better than me, but there's some tricks to pitching some of those things, quickly in different scenarios. So that's the gear. As far as clothing, I have some updates to some rain gear. I've updated the Stormfront rain gear. I've updated the Cloudburst rain gear. So we used to have something called the dew point, and for lots of boring logistical reasons, I wasn't able to continue to make the dew point. So that was our lightest rain gear in the big game line. But we kind of redesigned the Cloudburst rain gear and took some build out, but upgraded the laminate, really high quality. And the Cloudburst is now the lightest rain gear in the big game line. So certainly anybody who's, backpacking, going to Colorado for elk, etc., that would be the rain gear I'd recommend. But it's only, I believe, 3 ounces heavier than where the dew point was. So definitely a little more durability, but not at too much of a weight penalty. So, updated the rain gear, always trying to make it better. And then, but the two pieces of clothing for men, one's called the Kelvin Active Hoodie. So the Kelvin Active Hoodie utilizes a brand new insulation that, to my knowledge, has never been used in hunting. It's called PolarTec Alpha Direct. And so when you look at it, it's a 4-way stretch nylon face, so it's durable, but the thing's stupid lightweight, and I can't remember off the top of my head how lightweight, but it's stupid lightweight, and it's got a, half zip on the front. It's got a hood and then a kangaroo pocket for your hands. But the insulation inside is also the lining, and so when you look at this piece, it looks kind of furry on the inside. Well, that's actually the insulation, and it's the lining. So what that allows is you to leave one layer of material at home, right? So you don't have to put a lining in it. So that makes it lighter. It makes it breathe better. And then, it moves moisture. If it were to get wet, it's ridiculously fast to dry. And it's the perfect layering piece for the Apex hoodie. And the reason I say that is because if you remember, the Apex hoodie has elbow pads, correct?
Yep.
So when you would put any other insulation over top of the Apex hoodie, so a lot of times I'd put the Kelvin Active jacket, I'd end up covering up those elbow pads. Inevitably, I'd get in a scenario where I'd go on a stalk, and then even though I have the elbow pads, I'm kind of grinding the elbows off my Kelvin Active jacket. So with that in mind, and in the spirit of the archery hunter, we cut the sleeves off at the elbow on the Kelvin Active hoodie. And that does a couple things. One, you always have access to those elbow pads on the Apex hoodie when you're wearing it. Two, the Apex or the Kelvin Active hoodie's crazy lightweight, and it's quiet. And so it's just this perfect complement to the Apex hoodie. But I also wore it in BC as one of my layers when I was up there in October for 2 weeks. Because as I begin to layer more and more jackets on top of each other, as you build a system to, protect yourself from whatever weather, like you begin to add a lot of bulk to your forearms. You just do. And I'm up there trying to archery hunt, moose, and I don't want really big bulky forearms or I'm going to start getting string slapped. So by actually not having one layer without, material and insulation on your forearms is actually a good thing. And it was actually an exceptionally great piece to layer within kind of a warmer cold weather system. So that is the apparel piece. And then I've got one more item, which is called the Stormfront glove. And the Stormfront glove is a glove we've had in our line for a very long time. And I don't know if you've ever used it, but it's a long gauntlet glove. Have you ever used that?
No.
Gore-Tex shell?
Nope, I've never used it.
Yeah, okay. So it's a great glove, but, it's a little dated in just how it looks. And, it performs exceptionally well. It's got a removable kind of thick fleece liner. But the glove I always wanted, and the glove, when I was working for the government trying to not design stuff, but tell other people how, what we'd like to have designed, I always wanted a short gauntlet Gore-Tex shell glove that had a removable liner, and I could never figure out why nobody could do it. And the reality was, it's really complicated to do. And so just to give you a little education real quick, the way a normal Gore-Tex glove is built is you take a shell, and it could be, a nylon with a DWR on it, and you basically make the shell of the glove, and you just, you sew it together, you put a palm on it, but that's not waterproof. And then you take the Gore-Tex liner. So the Gore-Tex liner that would go in a glove, if you were to blow in it like a balloon, it would actually look like Mickey Mouse's hand. It's like big and fat fingered and puffy, almost looks like a catcher's mitt with fingers on it. That's the Gore-Tex liner that actually goes in a traditional Gore-Tex glove. So you stick that in the glove, and because it's bigger than the actual glove shell, you get lots of creases and bulk and things like that. And then you have to put a liner inside of that to protect the Gore-Tex the Gore-Tex inside the glove. So you actually have 3 layers of material. So it's heavier, it doesn't breathe as well, etc. From my knowledge, we're only the third, I think we're the third company, at least the research I've done, the third company in the world that's been able to make a taped Gore-Tex shell glove. And the reason is because it's really complicated to do. I believe Arc'teryx was the first people to do it. Then North Face, I believe, did it. And I think we are the third now that have been able to do that. So what you get, Bo, is you get a crazy lightweight, awesome, dexterous, short gauntlet Gore-Tex glove. It is what it is. Like the Gore-Tex, the shell, the liner, it's all one, and it is great. It breathes well. It's got very limited seam taping. And then we've got a really nice fleece glove liner that goes inside there. If so, you can use the shell by itself, you can use the shell with the liner, or you can run any of our other fleece or merino glove liners into that shell. So it really, we've built a great glove system that I think people are really gonna be excited about. And the reason I made the gauntlet short and didn't keep the long elbow length gauntlet is because, we'll take BC again as a great example. I pretty much wore them every day when I was up there, especially when we were riding horses. But, some days when it wasn't raining and it was just sunny but cold, I would pull those gloves on and the gauntlet would go over top of whatever jacket I was wearing because there was no precipitation. But on the days that it was raining or snowing real hard, I would pull the jacket of the sleeve of my rain jacket down over top of that short gauntlet. So now when I'm riding, as the water's running down my arms, it's not running right down into my gloves, making my hands wet. So it gives you that versatility as the weather changes.
Okay. I gotcha. So this is, I guess, from the takeaway with it is the way that this glove is without having the liner in there, you can actually, like you said, wear a liner glove, say a merino or the Traverse or anything like that inside it and be able to kind of be a little bit more versatile from that standpoint.
Correct. And then the actual shell is waterproof.
Yeah, so it's not the actual, not just the liner. If you really
start to dissect gloves, right. If you really start to dissect Gore-Tex gloves, they always are a 3-layer. They have 3 different layers that make it waterproof, and we were able to, it's really kind of an origami exercise when our designer kind of tried to figure this out, that you basically try to make this, and you make it with as least amount of seams as possible, because every time you seam tape it, it cuts a little bit down on breathability and kind of takes away some of the tactile feel of the glove. So it's a really, when you look at it, you're like, oh, that's a really nice glove. But when you really understand what it is, like it's damn near a work of art, what the designer was able to do. And like I said, as far as I know, we're only the third company that's been able to do it. So I'm really excited because for the first time, like I finally got like the cold weather glove I've always wanted, which is pretty cool. And I know you've let me talk a lot, but the last thing I will say is we've got a whole new system for women for big game that they're going to be stoked on. We've got lightweight merino for them. We've got a hooded merino top that's exceptional. We've got a scent pants and a new mountain jacket for the ladies. And the mountain jacket has something I've always wanted on the men's mountain jacket, which is a hood. So the women have a hooded windstopper mountain jacket, which is awesome. Jetstream vest, so a windstopper vest, which is just, it's killer. And we made it in black as well as camo. Just an exceptional piece. Like I said, we have the pack for them. And then something that is going to be difficult for me to explain, but it's called the Women's Active Tank. And basically what it is think of like a technical tank top that women can wear like as a sports bra if they want, but it's full length, but it's a tank top. Huh. And so basically I wanted to make sure that they had a complete layering system from skin to shell, and the women we were working with said, hey, we'd really like to have something like this. And so
did you have to do the product testing?
No, you will not find a picture of me wearing it, but the one woman who came over from Patagonia a couple years ago, she headed that project, and it's a great piece, and it, to me, I think it just shows our commitment to the women hunters who wear Sitka, that we're in it for the long haul, and we heard that this was something that they wanted, and it certainly wasn't something I had ever worked on before. So we brought in people who knew what they were doing, and anyway, so they have the women in Big Game have a lighter weight, call it warm weather system now, and then they have the original system we built that kind of trended more towards mid to late season and colder temperatures. So just a really great lineup, I think, overall. And what is it? It's almost December 1st as we talk, and I think sometime first week of January, we'll be showing the world all this stuff at the shows.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I'll release this right basically first day ATA show is probably my plan. So I can't release it next week, or then you'll be giving me another call. So I better wait until then.
Yeah, I'd appreciate you wait just a couple more weeks. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So actually, John, I did get to see the Kelvin Active Hoodie when we were up in Alberta there. So I got to play with a little bit. Up in Alberta. Yeah. So Eric had it, and I was like, "Hey, what's that?" And he's like, "Oh, geez." But pulled it out, and I was playing with it, and that, without having a liner in there, it feels weird at first, but it's so lightweight and packable. Like, and the Kelvin Active jacket is my absolute favorite piece in the Big Game line. I always have it with me, and that was really cool to see that. And to add the hood to it, and like you said, the no sleeves, or the no forearm, I guess, sleeves. I think that's going to be something that people may look at it first and not really understand it, but if they get the education behind it and give it a shot, I feel like it would be an awesome layering piece and an outer shell for a lot of elk hunting.
Oh yeah. I think if I was able to go around and talk to every Sitka consumer and talk to them about that piece, every one of them would buy one, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to take a little education on their part, because people are going to go, why is it furry on the inside? Now, I don't mean furry, but you've seen it. Why is it furry on the inside, and why are the sleeves cut off at the elbows? And it's like, because we build specialized gear, and like, that's exactly what in certain situations, that's exactly what I want. And because we were talking about Aaron earlier, I got Aaron one of those, I think in September, and I asked him, just please don't, publicly show it. But he's like, dude, this thing's incredible, and especially for archery hunters, like it's gonna make sense to archery hunters, I think, right away. But like I said, even up in British Columbia, and I won't go through the whole system I was wearing, but I had that on every day as part of my layering system, and it was unbelievable. I mean, the warmth that it provides for as light as it is, and then the hood with the nylon, like I wasn't even wearing a beanie half the time up in British Columbia, and it was like getting to be winter up there. Just because I could pull that hood up, it would block the wind, and then if I got hot, I would just pull the hood back and vent, and just an exceptional piece, a really technical piece. Some people in the mountain sports community have definitely made some stuff out of it, but nobody in the hunting space has even gone there yet.
That's awesome.
So I'm excited to be able to bring that to market first. And yeah, the Kelvin jacket is absolutely, or the Kelvin Active jacket is absolutely probably my favorite. But man, this one's going to give it a run for its money, Bo. I'm telling you, for me.
Okay. I like I said, I saw that hood at first and I was like, yes, that's perfect. And then I saw the sleeves cut off, and at first, I kind of sat there and thought about it. And I just think, like, even layering that directly over, say, the core lightweight, anything like that when you're elk hunting. I mean, I just, in my head, I'm picturing all the different scenarios that you could use it for. And I see it being in my system. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's quiet, so I would have no problem. Well, I've stalked in it, and I would have no problem. Early morning, you're going out, sun's just coming up and you got, say, an Apex hoodie on, but you need a little more insulation. So I've got that on, and I've got no problem stalking in that. And then, if it gets warm, then you just strip that off and you keep the Apex hoodie on. And then as the sun goes back down, you just put that back over. And I mean, it weighs nothing. I wished I could remember what it weighs, but it doesn't weigh very much at all. Packs down really nice. And yeah.
And like you said, that's going to definitely be an educational thing for people to understand it. Cause I know, like when I was, working down the shop and trying to sell, or I guess talk to people about the Kelvin Active jacket, the biggest thing everyone would say to me is it doesn't feel durable because it's so quiet and lightweight and soft on the outside. And I'm like, guys, I mean, I've used it for situations it's probably not even meant for. When I'm turkey hunting in Pennsylvania, I was wearing it going through briar patches and everything else. I'm like, this is an extremely tough material. I mean, I wouldn't have thought that from first feeling it. And again, it's an educational thing to understand it. And when I saw the new Kelvin Active hoodie, I was like, this feels even, softer and lighter and everything else. It doesn't feel like it would be durable, but it is, and that's what's crazy about it. Yeah,
no, it is. We work real hard to, as to try to find these different textiles that kind of provide these unique things we're looking for. It's not easy sometimes, but those two pieces especially, like I'm so excited how both of them came out. Those Kelvin Active pieces are just exceptional, but it does. And this is one of the reasons I appreciate you, having me on your podcast, is because it does require some education, because some of this stuff is a little foreign to a lot of people, not just hunters, but to a lot of people that looking at technical apparel, because we're always trying to push, what's possible and get better performance. And, that comes at a bit of a cost, and not a financial one, but an educational one that we have to continue to, bring our consumer along in our community, to really understand the value and to help them get the most bang for their buck out of the product. If I buy a Gunworks rifle and only shoot it at 250 or 300 yards, like I'm actually not really exercising the system I've got. And I feel it's the same with the Sitka system. It's like, it's going to work no matter how much you do or don't know. But the more you know, the more educated you are on the system, you are going to be unbelievably amazed at what it can do for you. And you and I have obviously had lots of conversations about this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. I think you and I could geek out about it for quite a while talking. But
oh yeah.
I've been wearing like a whole bunch of different stuff of different systems and the way how to just kind of layering it just to try out different things and see what works and what doesn't. It's fun to play around with, but I guess I don't think everyone has that same mindset, but I think you and I think similarly on that. So,
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, I can't wait till we're having this conversation on this podcast next year, because quite frankly, the stuff for 2020 is going to blow your hair back.
You can't be talking about that, John.
No, I'm just telling you. I always like to leave a tease, but I'm telling you, man, it's going to blow your hair back.
All right. Well, all I ask from you is that hopefully your second Instagram post is going to be a picture with that new women's tank on to show everyone how to exercise that system. Now that you got the cat photo up.
I'm not sure I can outdo my first post, but that might do it. That actually might do it.
But yeah, so John, is there anything else that you want to cover from that standpoint, or anything else you want to leave the listeners with at the end here?
Well, as you know, you got to see some of the new whitetail stuff for this next year. Pretty awesome. So we'll just say that. I'm sure you guys will be talking about that. But no, I like I told you, man, I love the forum you got here. I love the whole concept. I appreciate you letting me come on and run my mouth for a while, but it's always good catching up with you, and
Yeah.
Hopefully I get to see you at the shows here in the next few months.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, we were going to record this at ATA, and you brought up a good point of how busy it is, and it's probably not a good place to be able to focus and get this done. So I'm glad we did it ahead of time, and maybe we can just have a couple beers or something.
Yeah, I'd much rather have beers. Most of the time at those shows, like from morning till an hour after they close, I mean, I don't even have time to get a drink of water.
Yeah.
Let alone do a podcast. So yeah, I'd rather just go grab a beer with you and see what you think about some of the stuff that I've talked about that you haven't seen yet.
Yeah, I'm excited. So, all right, John. Well, I guess we'll leave it at that, and appreciate you coming on once again, and I'm sure this won't be the last time.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot, Bo. I look forward to seeing you here in a couple weeks.
All right, we'll see you later, John.
Okay, man.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of East Meets West Hunt with your host, Bo Martonic. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit eastmeetswesthunt.com, Facebook at East Meets West Outdoors, and Instagram at East Meets West Hunt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.